Hello and welcome, everyone. We are live tonight. A little bit long of a lecture, but you know how it is. This is how we roll. And it is cold outside and the soup is on, so I'm ready for that soup. I earned that soup today, let me tell you. Warm in my belly. But it is very windy and cold outside. So, little bit's all snuggled up next to me. He's ready. Yes, I know you're ready. So let us be ready. Tonight's lecture, I am called by thy name, O Lord. This is from March the 17th, 1964. Tonight's title is taken from the book of Jeremiah. It's the 15th chapter, the 16th verse. Thy words were found, and I ate them, and thy words became to me the joy and delight of my heart. And then he tells the results of eating these words. For I am called by thy name, O Lord God of hosts. He found the words, he ate them, assimilated them, and then it produced this knowledge that he who ate them, who assimilated them, is actually the very being that is the cause of all the phenomena of life. The whole vast universe was himself pushed out, that everything was created by him, and he didn't know it until he found the words. Then he ate them. And having eaten them, he assimilated them. And that's what you and I are called upon to do. You see, we take food in and we assimilate what we can build into our system, and then we reject what we cannot use. Well, the Bible is the same way. We have taken the vehicle that conveyed the instruction for the instruction, and we have mistakenly taken personifications for persons, and the gross first sense for the ultimate sense intended. And so, like food, you take it in, and then the system discriminates between what it can use, what it can assimilate and build into its system, and what it must expel, what it must reject. And we read, so we're told, and they read from the law, and they read it clearly. This is the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 8. And they read it clearly so that they heard it with understanding. And when they heard it with understanding, well, they could discriminate and reject the instrument that conveyed it, and then accept what it conveyed, the kernel, the life essence of it, as it were. So tonight our story is, I am called by thy name. Now, what is the name? Well, we are told the name of the strong tower, and the righteous man runs into it, and he is safe. I will respond. I will answer all who call me by my name. He will answer everything, or he will answer everyone who calls by his name. Well, now, how will I call this night? Because I am also told, whatever you ask in my name, I will do it. Anything that you ask in my name, I will do it. And that you'll find in John 14, verse 13. Whatever you ask in my name, I will do it. But find out the name. Oh, find out the name. Well, now there are millions this night asking in certain names, and they are not getting any response. So it may not be the same. It may not be the name. What is the name? Either then the promise is a lie, or they haven't the right name. Now, in the Bible, a name, whether of a man, an angel, deity, regardless of what it represents in scripture, it simply, in some wonderful way, reveals the character of its bearer. So if Moses, who claims that he had a revelation of the name of God, is going to impress the elders with what he claims that he heard and what he saw, he has to know the name. And so he said, this is my revelation. It came to me in this form. Careful, careful, careful. It came to me in this form. I am has sent you. When I go to the people of Israel and they insist on a name, what shall I tell them? Just say, I am that I am. And when you go, say, I am has sent you. That's all. Now, is that the name? I tell you, it is the name as told us in the 3rd chapter of Exodus. It's not only my name, it is my name forever, my name for all generations, forever and forever. Just I am. And that is Exodus chapter 3, verse 13 through 15. Well, how do I call upon I am? If the God I worship has the name I am, then it seems to me that only through what I am can I worship him aright. Oh, again? Well, how do I call upon I am? If the God I worship has the name I am, then it seems to me that only through what I am can I worship him aright. Highlighting. So, how can I call this night on the name? So you can call me Neville and I respond. If I walk down the street and I hear the name John, I don't turn around. If I hear the name Neville, well, I will stop and respond because that's my name. For I am told, if he calls upon my name, I will answer him. If he does not call on my name, I cannot respond. I can only respond to my name. What was that? I can only respond to my name. Well, how then will I call upon God's name? His name is I am. Well, I put it to the test. And I tried it unnumbered ways, putting it to the test. The name is I am. That is what we are told. In Scripture, the word is Jehovah. In the New Testament, that same I amness is spelled Jesus. But the word Jesus does not respond. The word Jehovah does not respond. I am does respond. But how does it respond? Here comes this day a letter to me, and he's here tonight. And he said, I'm from the Midwest. My mother and brother have had nothing but physical problems. I mean, health problems. He came out of the Second World War emotionally disturbed, and he's been in and out of the Veterans Hospital, well, constantly, really. He's always taking these psychological treatments. For 4 years, I made a little plan. I called it my mailing program, and I mailed them what I called metaphysical literature for 4 years, hoping that they would read it and would have a change of attitude towards life and bring about a change in themselves. For the medical world seemed not to help. They got no help from the medical world. So I thought, well, now I'll get this and I'll call it my program, my plot. Well, at the end of 4 years, I heard you, and then I stopped it, and I stopped sending them books, which I didn't realize until only 2 weeks ago that they never even read one of the books. As they came, they threw them into the ash can. But I didn't know that until 2 weeks ago, when a neighbor of my mother from the Midwest came paying a visit to the West Coast, and she told me as the mail arrived, books right straight to the ash can. So they never once read a book. In keeping with what Ben Franklin said about books that were given, he said that people seldom read a book that is given to them, and the best way to spread a thought is to charge a modest price for it. Don't give a book. Charge a modest price for it, and because they've invested, they read. But this was not an investment on their part. The son sent these books week after week in the hope that in some strange way the mother would read them, the brother would read them, and bring about in themselves a change of attitude towards society, which they didn't. So he said, what I did was this. I couldn't reach them by sending them gifts of books. And having heard you that the whole thing is myself, I didn't have to depend upon my mother reading a book or my brother reading a book. I could do it. So I assumed full responsibility now to produce a change in them. Though we are hundreds of miles away, no physical contact save by letter. I took a letter in my hand, a mental letter in my mental hand, and I could actually see. He used the word actual. I could actually see my brother's hand writing. And then I read what I wanted to read when I opened that letter. That I'm feeling much better, and mother is much better than she has been. I read it over and over in his handwriting. On the morning of February 24th last month, I received a letter dated from the 22nd from my brother, word for word, because he actually told me what he said, and then he quoted from his brother's letter. Not one word, not a comma was out of place. That this letter is coming across space, saying to his brother here, he said, may I tell you, Neville, not in 10 years have I had anything but a negative letter from my mother and my brother, not once concerning their health condition, but a negative state. And here in 3 weeks, I did it for 3 weeks, every day, and quite often several times in the course of the day. When I thought of it, I simply repeated it. At the end of 3 weeks, this letter came, and the following day, one from my mother. This is what she said. Well, I have not felt better in 15 years. From the two that were simply hypochondriacs. He said, I know now. Imagining does create reality. I don't have to spend my money sending them books to get them to read it. All I need is the desire on my part to help them, and then it becomes my responsibility. And so I simply went to the end. The end was a letter in my hand where I could actually see my brother's handwriting, and then read the contents of that letter as I wanted to read it. So I actually wrote the letter that I read 3 weeks later. It was written in my brother's handwriting, but I dictated that letter. The whole thing was all within me. So I know today I can support this claim. Imagining does create reality. So that is the name. Call upon my name. Well, who was doing it? And I said to him, well, who's doing it? And he said, well, I am. And he would have told me, but he said, I told no one. I kept it as my secret. I never confided to anyone. I just said, I am hearing from my brother. So he was calling on the name, the only name in this world that responds. The name Jesus? Yes. It is the most glorious name in the world, but only when you know the name, what it means. Jesus actually means I am. If you know how to spell it, it is spelled Yod Ha Vav Shin Ayin, Joshua. You break it down, Yod Ha Vav Shin Ayin. There's a definite reason for the shin in the name. A shin is a flame, a fire, and an ayin is an eye. And so Yod Ha Vav would be Jehovah. But the name is an active state, which is called Jesus, is God in action. Same thing. Do you believe in Jesus? What do you think of Jesus? Someone asked William Blake, and he said, Jesus? Oh, why, he's the only God. But so am I, and so are you. If I tell you this night that you are Jesus, would you be embarrassed? Are you going to bend your head in shame or think that I am blaspheming the name of God? Well, I mean it when I tell you that you are Jesus. You see, you don't know it yet, but you are Jesus. That God actually became man, that man may become God. The day will come. I hope it's tonight. But it's coming to every child born of woman. Then they will know who they are. And in the very end, because the story of Jesus is all about the end, it hasn't a thing to do with your social world, anything here at all. It is all about the end. Eschatology is the only story of Jesus. So he comes only to fulfill scripture. The end. And what was that end? That God so loved man that he actually gave himself. For he and the Son are one. It's okay. He actually gave himself. For he and the Son are one. He actually gave himself to man because of his love of man. He became man and lost himself in man. But when he actually gave himself to man, bear in mind, God was Father. So if someone who is a father gives himself to me, but completely gives himself to me, then I must be a father, regardless of my sex, regardless of my position in this world. If he succeeds in his purpose of giving himself to me, and he who gave himself to me was a father, well, then I must be a father. He has it all planned out, how to reveal to me that he gave himself to me. And so he reveals it in his Son. There is no way in the world that God can prove to me that he gave himself to me, save he has a Son that is his only begotten Son. Well, then that only begotten Son, in the depths of my soul, I see him. And I know he is my Son. And he calls me Father. I know he is my Son, and he knows I am his Father. There is no way in eternity that God the Father could ever give himself to man and convince man to whom he gave himself that he succeeded in his purpose of that giving of self to man, unless the Son reveals the gift. So out of the depths of the soul of man comes the Son, and the Son is David. So a riddle is asked in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 30. Who has established the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his Son's name? Well, surely you know. Proverbs 30, verse 4. So we are told, we know. Well, where is he? In the depths of man is the Son. He's called Olam in scripture, and Olam means the eternal youth, the eternal lad, the eternal son. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11. The question is constantly asked, where? Who is he, and who is that son? Well, whose son are you, young man? Whose son is that stripling? Whose son? 1 Samuel 17, verse 56. And then no one knows. No one will know until he appears in the depths of the soul of the individual to whom God now reveals his purpose. You see the Son, and the Son calls you Father. So what is his fabulous name? The name is I am. For purposes here on earth, it is I am. But in the end, you will know the meaning of these words, and all will become king. Who? The Lord will become king over all of the earth on that day. The Lord will be one, and his name one. Zechariah 14, verse 9. So you and the other 3 billion or 4 billion of us in this world will one day have the satisfaction of knowing that God fulfilled his purpose in you. You will see God's only begotten Son, and he will call you Father. Psalm 2, verse 7. Well, he has already called me Father. So if he calls me Father, and he calls you Father, well, then you and I are one. Without loss of identity, we're the father of the same Son. Then we understand the great mystery of this compound unity where, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. The I am, our I ams, form one I am. So the whole vast world, all are aware of being. So if I am aware of being, I say I am. And you are aware of being, so you say I am. But you think you differ from me because I respond to Neville and you respond to John or some other name. But gradually we're moving towards one name. For in that day the Lord will be one and his name one. So I will tell you that name. In that day your name is Jesus, self-born, born out of your own wonderful being, brought forth, and you are Jesus. Because Jesus is the Father of the only begotten Son of God. When you see me, you see the Father. Well, how can you say, show me the Father? When you see me, you see the Father. John 14, verse 9. And so did not David call me Lord, said he? If David in the Spirit calls me Lord, how can I be David's son? Matthew 22, verse 42. Well, David called me Lord, called me Adonai. He called me my Father. So if he called me Father, how can I be David's son? And so he reveals himself as the Father. For he who sees me sees the Father. Everyone will have the experience of being called by David, Father, and then you know who you are. So I say, Jesus, you are Jesus, but you have not yet remembered. He said, this is my name forever, not only forever, but that all generations. Thus all generations shall remember me by that name. And that name, when you come right down to it as a sound, it is Jesus. In a practical sense, it is I am. I am writing a letter. What letter? I'm not going to tell you now. Well, I'm writing a letter. It's coming from my brother. I'm writing another letter. It's coming from my mother. And they're telling what they haven't told me in 10 years. Because they're always complaining about how horrible they feel. But now, I am going to make them tell me they never felt better. And so my mother's going to write me a letter. Here's the letter in my hand. And she's telling me she hasn't been better. And I thought, 10 years? Whew, she changed the script somewhat because she told me 15 years. But my memory went back 10 years. I cannot recall when she wasn't complaining. And so I thought 10 years was long enough. She tells me by her own letter, 15 years. My brother tells me he has never felt better, that everything is perfect, and I haven't received a letter of that nature in 10 years from my home in the Midwest. And to discover, through the grapevine, a lady comes west, or someone comes west, who just saw them and said that every time when the mail came bringing your gift of a book, right straight to the ash can, didn't even open the book. Well, I have those too. I must confess, I do the same thing with a few things. I have some Jehovah's Witnesses who are determined to convert me. And I get all kinds of letters from my ex-wife. She sends me these magazines from something. Well, I look at it, I thank her profusely, but then I tear it in half and into the ash can. I do the same thing there too. So I must confess, in this way I have acted in the same strange manner. I have no time to read it. It's called the Watchtower or something. But I'm not on that kind of watchtower. This is a different kind of watchtower that I'm talking about here, where there's only God, and God is your own wonderful human imagination. That is God. Well, tonight you can test it, as this gentleman has tested it. As every story I tell from this platform bears witness to the fact that imagining creates reality. There is no other God. God actually became man, and the end is in God's control. No tyrant is going to change it. If the bombs begin to fall now, they aren't going to change the outcome. God planned it as it is, and as it will be consummated, and no power in the world is going to change it. So the whole vast world is responding to the activity taking place in us. What? So the whole vast world is responding to the activity taking place in us. But listen to this. And much of it is confusion because we don't know the name of God. So we go to church, we light candles, we do all kinds of things and call upon a name that isn't going to help at all. Well, you could be right in a bar. If you're ever up against the sixth glass and not quite sure what you're seeing and carrying on an inward conversation with self from premises of fulfilled desire, and in a way that no one knows, it will come to pass. Listen to what he said. You could be right in a bar. If you're ever up against the sixth glass and not quite sure what you are seeing and carrying on an inward conversation with self from premises of fulfilled desires, in a way that no one knows, it will come to pass. It hasn't a thing to do with your outer behavior, your activities. What are you doing on the inside? Oh, dear. What are you doing on the inside? So we are warned time and time again. You have heard it said. Well, I'll tell it, said he. If you look on anything lustfully, you have committed the act. Matthew 5:28. For that very act of feeling was the act. Oh, listen. If you look on anything lustfully, you have committed the act. Matthew 5:28. For that very act of feeling was the act. Whether you restrain the impulse following that feeling, it makes no difference. You did it. In the very moment of contemplating a thing with pleasure, you are doing it. What? In the very moment of contemplating a thing with pleasure, you are doing it. Well, you contemplate the receipt of a letter with pleasure. I received the letter, and oh, what wonderful news! Contemplated with pleasure? That is lusting. Oh, hold on to your pearls now. Well, it makes no difference if you restrain the impulse. So if you stop yourself from doing it, you've already felt it. You've already done it. Yes? So he says, because I have to highlight, highlighting that. And highlighting this. Good. He says, contemplated with pleasure. That is lusting. Not just a physical lust after a woman or a woman after a man, but to lust after the receipt of a letter with contents bearing witness to the fact that this imagining creates reality. Lusting after good news. Come now. Yes? He says, then wait for it. It will come. His took 3 weeks. What is a matter of 3 weeks? 3 months? May it come in 3 seconds? It could come. I've had it happen while I was in the act of doing it. I've had the phone ring to disturb my meditation, and I hadn't even completed it. I was doing it and hearing it vividly when the phone rang, and I am answering the phone to hear confirmation of what I am doing on the inside. All depends on where you are. On what level? Because there's no difference between divine imagining and human imagining, save in the degree of intensity. Seems like we have to say that again. All depends on where you are, on what level, because there is no difference between divine imagining and human imagining, save in the degree of intensity. So if I withdrew long enough or deeply enough, well, then I am more intense. And so if I really withdraw, if I shut out the entire world and then I start going into the depths of myself to hear something, then I'm more intense. So the phone rang. But if I don't, I am disturbed by the noise and I'm concerned about other things, well, then I am not withdrawing enough. Now, it still works, but then it takes a little longer time. Like putting on a little single light under the pot. It will boil eventually, but you could increase the flame and boil it quicker. And so the whole thing is within us. Did you hear? You could put a little flame, a single light under the pot, and it will boil eventually. But you could increase the flame and boil it quicker. And so the whole thing is within us. That is what he means by intensity, right? The heat. So when the Bible speaks of God, they are speaking of Jesus. And they're speaking of your imagination. When William Blake speaks, say, for instance, of the great poetic genius, to him, God was the poetic genius. And you say, well, I'm not a poet. You aren't? Have you ever had a dream? Do you know any poem in this world comparable in structure to a dream? Think of anything in this world. Take a Shakespeare, the world's greatest in the use of words, or take a William Blake. Do you think anything that Shakespeare ever wrote could compare to your dream? You take a dream, and the structure of the dream, everything falls out and in perfect order, and the conversations are in perfect order, not one word misplaced, and every character speaking just as they should speak, and the whole thing is unfolding, and you are doing it. Well, aren't you a poet? There isn't a poem in this world that can compare to a dream. And the whole dream unfolds so vividly before the mind's eye. You also are not only the author of the dream, you also throw yourself into the character. You are part of the dream too. It may be the major character. It may be a minor that you are playing. But you wrote it. You wrote the whole thing. You dramatize it and externalize it. And actually, well, you directed it. The whole thing took place in you. So then William Blake speaks of the poetic genius as divine imagining, and he calls divine imagining Jesus. Well, can't you imagine? Well, that is Jesus. But if you think for 1 second that's being blasphemous, no, it is not blasphemous. You dwell upon it. Tonight you dwell upon it. You sit there and you think noble things about others and expect it to come back to you just as you have imagined. Well, that is Jesus doing it. And don't be ashamed of it, for the day will come. You will not be called possibly Jesus, but you will be called Father by the very one who called him Father. And then you'll know who you are. If he calls you Father, and he called him Father, are you not Father? But who did he call Father? He called the grand I amness Father. So I say to you, eat the words. He said, I found your words and I ate them. I assimilated them. I expelled all the things I couldn't take in, like the instrument that conveyed the story. So, all right, I will take that. I'll take the kernel and discard the husk. And then they became to me, your words became to me a joy and the delight of my heart. Why? What did they produce in me? What, as I assimilated them, what did they build? They built this knowledge that I am called by thy name, O Lord God of hosts. You mean when I read the Bible and actually assimilated it, I discovered the whole book was about me? Well, yes. I discovered the whole book was about me. That he who brought me into being, as it were, as his emanation, so loved me that he cleaved to me and wouldn't let me go until he actually fulfilled his purpose to give me himself. And he being God the Father, and I being his wife, his emanation, that he cleaved to me and would not let me go until I actually became one with him. When that was contemplated, that union had to result in a child. For this is male, female, God the Father, as we're told in Isaiah chapter 54, verse 5. Your maker is your husband. I know, sweet boy, mommy knows. Your maker is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name. And so my maker is my husband. I am his emanation. Emanation, let's look it up. Something which originates or issues from a source. So you come from. Yes? I am his emanation. I came from him. And he cleaved to me until this dream of life comes to an end. It's called death. Until this death disappears. Well, then I am he. Well, this union must result in something creative, and that is a son. So he brings into my world his son, but by then I am he. And so the son calls me father. I am telling you what I know from experience. I am not speculating. I am not theorizing. These are not opinions. I never heard it from a man. I was never taught it. It came by the revelation of Jesus Christ. When I least expected it, it happened to me, and it happened in such a marvelous manner. Well, I can say to everyone, do not despair. I don't care what you have ever done. The love of God is so intense and so great. He isn't going to leave you. He has made a pledge to cleave to you. Let's define cleave. Cleave. It says, make a way through something forcefully as if by splitting it apart, right? A meat cleaver. Yeah, you cleave. But he has made a pledge to cleave to you. To you. So this cleaving is a joining, not a separation, right? So he has made a pledge to cleave to you, and he's not going to let go until he has transformed you into himself, and you are he. And so when it is done, well, you will have to confess that it is grace. It is a gift. You could not have earned it. Yeah, you could not have earned it. No man in the world could earn it. He isn't good enough. Therefore, because he cannot earn it, he can't brag about it. It is simply a gift, the gift of God. Grace is simply God's gift of himself to man. Grace is simply God's gift of himself to man. then he succeeds in giving me grace. Well, then he gives me himself. And so then he gives me himself, he has to give me his son. He can't be a father giving me himself and leave me barren. He has to give me his son, or he didn't give me himself. If he is a father, then he has to give me fatherhood. If he is God, he has to give me godship. He has to, or he did not complete his purpose. So whatever he is, whenever he pledges himself to do something, then I must be it. If his pledge was to give me all that he is, whatever he was before, well, I must become. And so the fatherhood I am. And if that name, that holy name is Jesus, well, you may laugh or you may walk out of here never to return again. It makes no difference to me. Because I am he. I am the same man, Neville, but I am he as you are he. So whether you believe it or not, you are he. You see, you don't know it, and I know it. I know not because I earned it. I know it because it was given to me. I did not earn it. No man can earn it. It is a gift. And because it is a gift, everyone will get it. So don't be embarrassed. When you see him, infinite love stands before you. And in the end, there is only one body, strangely enough. You are embraced and incorporated into the body of love, and it is your body. It is infinite, not in space. It's human, it's very human, but it is all love. Infinite in wisdom, infinite in power, infinite in every sense of the word, and it is your body, never again to be divorced from it. For that body is cleaving to you until you fuse into it, completely incorporated into the body of God. And that body is Jesus. We'll come to your question in a moment. Don't fret, we'll come to that question. For that body is cleaving to you until you fuse into it, completely incorporated into the body of God. And that body is Jesus. Because you are one with the body. You are he. Not a little portion of it. The whole, the fullness is in you. But here, for our practical purposes, I want letters after letters. I want you to take it this night and just try it. Just try what the gentleman did. He tried the outside effect. You see, we all do that at first. And so he tried to reach them by gifts of books, and they didn't even read the books. 4 years of spending time and money, and they all went into the ash can, the garbage. And then he stopped after he came here. And he hasn't been coming here too long. But he heard what you heard. And then he decided that the whole responsibility was his. He isn't going to blame his mother. He isn't going to blame his brother. He isn't going to blame anyone. And he isn't going to try to change them through physical, external means. He is going to change them because they are all himself pushed out. He assumed full responsibility for the world in which he lived. So if the whole vast world is myself pushed out, I will change my aspect. For did not James say, the greatest revolution in this country was the discovery by man that by changing his own inner attitudes of mind, he could change the outer aspects of life? Oh? Was the discovery by man that by changing his own inner attitudes of mind, he could change the outer aspects of his life? Why? So he didn't argue with others. He changed the inner attitudes of his own mind. And so he did it by holding a letter which he was reading as having come from his brother and having come from his mother. And that letter came at the end of 3 weeks. A complete radical change of attitude on their part, because there was first a change of attitude on his part. Oh, your question has been answered if you listen. I'm going to say it to you again. I'm highlighting it though. Hold on. I'm highlighting. So he says, the letter came at the end of 3 weeks. Here's what he did. He had a complete radical change of attitude on their part, because there was first a change of attitude on his part. He radically changed it and expected the response. If this world is only response, Christian, listen, because this is answering your question. How timely for you. I love you. I'm glad you're here. He says, if this world is only response, and I am the cause of the response, well, then get about the business and do something about it. We are the operant power. It cannot operate itself. We are the operant power. And so if my whole vast world is my imagination made visible, that all that I behold, though it appears without, it is within, in my own wonderful human imagination. And that this world that seems so objectively real and so completely independent of my perception of it is only reflecting the activities taking place in me. Well, then, do something about it. What do you do about it? I'm going to read it again. A complete radical change of attitude on their part. It happened. Why? Because there was first a change of attitude on his part. We'll dig into it some more, but let's continue the lecture. So I am asking everyone to do something about it and then write me. Tell me what happened, how you did it, as this gentleman did. It only took him 2 pages, not on both sides of the sheet. 1 page would have done it. In just 2 simple pages in longhand, he told me the story I told you tonight. And now I say to him, not a thing in this world can stop you but you. Oh, have mercy. Not a thing, because you know I'm highlighting that, right? Not a thing in this world can stop you but you. You are in business? Well, go to the top. Go to the end. Hold the end in your mind's eye. Hold it in your hand if there's something you can hold in your hand, implying the fulfillment of your dream. Hold it in your hand as you did the letter. If it is a contract, hold a contract. If it's a bank book with a certain statement, hold it. If it's the morning's paper bringing you the news you want, well, do you think that's crazy? Well, you can do it. Tomorrow's news can be determined by your own wonderful imagination. It's done anyway by your wonderful human imagination. In spite of all the conflicts of the world, try it. Don't say, well, now, suppose he operates differently. You'll give him power that doesn't belong to anyone in this world save he. The story is, I am he. Well, where is he? I am he. So don't think he can do it, because I am he. He will only reflect what you are doing. So you're the whole thing. It seems an awful responsibility, but it is true. And in the end, you are the very being that became you. He became you in love. He will raise you in love. And you will discover that you are the being that did the whole vast world. So try it. But above all, please, share with me. that I in turn may share with others your wonderful use of faith. The first thing to do with faith is to begin to live by it. The very first thing. Just begin to live by it. And it is faith in his name. And his name is I am. If you take a concordance and look up the word name, well, it's the most exciting search in the world through the 66 books. The name. You see where it goes and how he leads you to only one point. Confidence in I am, not in some other being, no intermediary between yourself and God, because Jesus, you think, is the intermediary. No, Jesus is your own wonderful I am. That is Jesus. That is God. He is God. He is God the Father. And he became man, that man may become God. So he is dwelling in man. This fortnight, we're going to have all over the Christian world stories of his resurrection. Yeah? I have to plug in a device. Sorry. Low battery. This coming fortnight, we're going to have all over the Christian world stories of his resurrection, stories of his crucifixion, and the same thing's going to happen this year that has happened in previous years. The story will not be properly told. You see, this is the great mystery of life through death. He gave himself to me, completely gave himself to me, and had to die like the little seed must die to be made alive. He died in me. He is buried in me in the tomb, the only tomb into which he was ever placed, my skull. When he awoke in my skull, I was he, the same being. I was he. And so the only place where he's ever buried is the skull. And when he comes out, all of the things told you of him, you are going to experience. Everything said of him, you are going to experience. And the whole thing is only the end, the last days. That's all he comes to reveal, because all prior to that was preparation. He is only concerned with the the eschatological concept of life. The very last days when he awakens in man. So tonight, let me quote it in a simple way. You sit quietly and now forget what you even did 1 second before. You may be ashamed of what you did, but God isn't. You've been made to feel that you did wrong, or maybe you did wrong in your own mind's eye. I have to highlight that. But don't think for one moment, because you did something that you thought wrong or society may judge you harshly for, that you are not now worthy to call on his name if you know his name. His name is I am. The night before, you could have been plastered. The night before, you could have done 1,000 things of which you may be ashamed. It does not stop you from getting the response from God if you call on his name. So, you sit quietly, close your eyes, just to aid your attention, and then construct the simpler the better, the simplest little scene, which implies the fulfillment of the dream. The holding of a piece of paper in your hand from a certain character, and that's what you want, and it reads as you want it, well, that's it. You want to take the hand of a friend, congratulate the friend on his good fortune, well, that's it. You want to see the ring on a finger of some friend who is anxious to be happily married in this world, well, then that is your scene. Whatever is the end, implying the fulfillment of the dream is what you see. And all you do it naturally and simply as you do it naturally. Give it tones of reality, sensory vividness, and then open your eyes. And then you hold God trustworthy. Highlighting. God is your own I am. Well, who did it? I did it. I was doing it. Well, you're saying I am. I am doing it. That is God. Now, hold God trustworthy. He's infinite in power, infinite in wisdom, and so we can do it. This conscious reasoning mind cannot do it. That was suspended when you actually called upon the name of God. You come back and you wear this conscious reasoning mind. All right, fine, wear it. It's a good mind. Nothing wrong with reason. But you try this. If you get results, and you will, then it doesn't really matter what others think, does it? For if we have evidence for a thing, does it really matter what the world thinks about it? If I can produce results by a way that seems insane and seems crazy, it doesn't matter if it seems insane if I get the results. So, I am called by thy name, and your name is my name, and the name is I am. Not some little thing on the outside. There's nothing more central than I am. If this very night I slept any place in the world, and by using my imagination, I could sleep wherever I wanted to sleep in imagination, couldn't I? Would it work? Well, yes, it will work. I've done it. You awakened here. How could I go there in the flesh? You will go there in the flesh. Things will happen to compel a change in your world, to compel you to make that journey if you sleep in imagination elsewhere, as though elsewhere were here. Because I am can never be other than here. And I don't say I am there. Wherever I am, it is here. And so it is always first person and present right here. So I can make here Moscow if I so desired. Then this would vanish and I would actually feel it to be Moscow here. Well, who is feeling it? I am. That is God. And all things are possible to God. Well, then, in a way that Neville, the conscious reasoning mind, does not know, well, he'll be compelled to make the journey to fulfill that command of God. So do it in this light, and you will not fail. And you'll send me letters because I do really want the letters to encourage everyone here that this thing works. It proves itself in performance. Now, here's a question this question follows the lecture. I'm coming to you, Christian dearest. The question is inaudible. The question is, first of all, this is a story told last Friday. A gentleman who is a professional writer writes the story of a friend of his today by the name of Eddie. Now, he's extremely fond of Eddie. He met Eddie seemingly by accident 2 years ago, to discover suddenly last Sunday morning while in the shower, as he personally recalled an experience of his 6 years ago, when a story was dictated to him in a similar manner. The story that he had that very week dictated. He felt the presence behind dictating, prompting. And then the whole thing flashed into his mind. Why, that central character of the story of 6 years ago is identical with Eddie of flesh and blood. Here, this character of fiction is now wearing flesh and blood. So he reread the story in my book, The Law and the Promise, called There Is No Fiction, that chapter. So he discovered that all of the characters that he as a writer created over the years actually are walking around this world in flesh and blood. He hasn't met all as yet, but said he, well, there are many that I have written that I have no desire to meet in the immediate present, not in the flesh anyway. Well, it doesn't really matter. We've all done it. We've all done it anyway. Without being a professional writer, we are having these characters. For instance, I know a man in New York City. He didn't know Mr. Roosevelt. He didn't know him at all, but he delighted. Every morning when he shaved, he would spend, say, 10 minutes shaving that face of his, a young man 30. And I said, what on earth prompts you to do a thing like this? And he said, you have no idea, Neville, what a joy I get out of it. There's no show on Broadway that could give me the kick that I get when I look into that mirror and tell Roosevelt off. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm telling him what I think of him. I say, who do you think you are, king? But this is America, a democracy. We don't have any kings. So you want 4 years in the White House and your 4 sons? Are they going to be all princes now? Are we going to have this royalty? Well, I said, well, what are you doing this for? And he said, oh, but Neville, what a joy. I get a kick out of it. And I said, after all, you're building a character. Now, he doesn't write. This man hasn't written, but he was carrying on a mental conversation with something that he despised. Well, Mr. Roosevelt is gone from this world, never met the man. The man never met him. But he will meet a character that will make Roosevelt look like a bunch of roses to him. I mean, these are the things we do in this world. And so, you single out here. This is the year of politics. This is 1964, this lecture. We're in 2024, and he says this is the year of politics. Yikes! And so you are either for or against. All the things we are for. And then you are going to take the other fella in your mind's eye and you're going to tell him off. You're going to carry on these mental conversations with him and say everything that is unlovely. You're going to spend the most time on the one you don't like and little time on the one you like. Man should be for, not against. The morning's paper, you can tell the editorial policy of a paper by the things they're against. They'll tell you exactly who they're going to vote for. Read the columnist in any paper, and you see the policy that will capture that paper. They are against. They're not for. But you be for in this world. You single out what you want. Let them go their way. Vote, yes, certainly vote. Vote for someone. Don't vote against. And vote for him. And if you want to vote, and you should, I think you should want to vote for someone. But don't waste your precious time in carrying on these mental conversations with the opposition. You are only enlarging them and building characters in your world that you must tomorrow encounter. What did he say? Let me read that again for those in the back who didn't hear it. He says, don't waste your precious time in carrying on these mental conversations with the opposition. Why? Because you're only enlarging them and building characters in your world that you must tomorrow encounter. But, he says, may I tell you, in the end, all will be forgiven. Because in the end, all is forgiven. All. You could make lame people in this world. Blind people, all kinds of people. In the end, you will confront them. And in the twinkle of an eye, all will be made perfect. Every one of them will be transformed into the beauty that they should have been in the beginning, that you disfigured them by your arguments and all of the things that you did. But in the end, you will confront them, an infinite sea of human imperfection. As you walk by, because in that moment you have been lifted up, and the heavenly chorus sang out your praise and called you by name, that you are risen. And as you walk by, gliding by in this glorious body, this immortal body of yours made of fire and air, it seems. And as you walk by, everyone is molded into perfection because you are perfect. And then you understand the words, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. You must be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. And as you walk by, everyone is made whole. So in the end, all is perfect. But while we are struggling to awaken to the realization that our own imagination is God, we create such strange, monstrous things. So, to come back to your question, what should he do? Well, were I he, I would do nothing. He wrote them and they sold. He'll be called upon tomorrow. He doesn't have to conceive all the stories. Maybe when he goes to the conference, I don't know. I'm not a writer. So when he goes into conference and they say, I want a story and this is the plot, as a professional writer, he has to take the suggestion of the producer, whoever is responsible, and he has to conceive and put it into these things. Like Shakespeare gave us these fantastic things, but what characters? Were I Shakespeare walking this earth, I wouldn't undo one thing that he's done. They're so altogether marvelous, every character. In fact, we speak of Shakespeare's 400th anniversary, and I think of the great ones. You take a Dickens. Do you know what his characters are? Do you know that his characters are better known than Dickens? They're all alive. And don't you meet them? Haven't you met Scrooge? Who hasn't met a Scrooge in this world? He's far more alive than Dickens. Dickens as a character, maybe he wasn't pleasant. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't want to have a dinner party with him, but I enjoy his characters. I wouldn't mind having them to dinner, quite a few of them, but not all. And so these characters are alive, and they're all people in this world. You meet them, and one can play so many parts. You could be the most protective, loving husband in this world, and in the office, you're a devil. And yet at home, you could be to her all that she desires as a husband. See, so we're all characters anyway. One moment, please. Thank you for your patience. This is the second question. It is also inaudible, but Neville responds. He says, and I, when I am lifted up from the earth, I will lift all men unto me. And that's an actual true story. The day will come, you'll be lifted up. And I'll tell you exactly how you'll be lifted up. In a spiral motion. He says, you'll go up like this and you don't even know. You simply are taken up that way through the top of your head in a spiral motion. A heavenly chorus will sing your praise as you are lifted up, call you by name, and pronounce, he is risen, calling you by name. And the chorus will sing it out. Unnumbered voices. But what heavenly voices? Then you will see an infinite field of human imperfection, and they're all waiting for you. Not just idly waiting. They're waiting for you because you're going to redeem them. You will glide by in this immortal body of yours, a fiery, airy body. It's luminous. You don't need a sun. You don't need the moon. You illuminate your world because you are the light. As you walk by, gliding by, everyone is made perfect as you go by. That chorus comes in at the very end and it swells in the most glorious exaltation. It is finished. The last words of the cross. And when it exalts, it is finished. Then you crystallize once more in the body of clay for unfinished business. Which unfinished business is to tell it? To tell and testify to the truth of Jesus Christ, the only reality in the world. But the churches have completely misunderstood the mystery of Jesus Christ and talk about him as a being of flesh and blood. What a man in whom it first appeared did for a job on earth is irrelevant. That he was a carpenter, a mason, a banker, a writer, it is irrelevant. He's not talking of that. The whole story is simply taking place in the soul of that being. If you read it carefully, the experiences were not witnessed by anyone other than himself. And he was not what they were looking for. They were looking for some majestic being to come out of space as a conqueror who would lead Israel, who had been crushed, into some victorious campaign and enslave those who had enslaved Israel. That was not Messiah at all. So they knew him. They knew his background. They knew this, that, and he, the other. They knew it all over the place. It doesn't matter what you know of a man. Doesn't matter what you know of a man, the weaknesses of a man. Who isn't weak in this world? The body is weak. Spirit is willing. The flesh is weak. No matter how strong it is weak. Weaknesses, our little links that are weak. And so if you know the little weak link, you can always point the finger and say, what? He? Well, how can he be chosen? Well, it wasn't his choice. God chose him. God made the choice. And so if God chooses, well, then it's God's secret of election. No one knows it. But those who know you well and know you intimately can always point the finger at your weaknesses because they know you. I have those who wouldn't come near me because I'm a divorced man. If I was not divorced and kept 20 on the side, well, that was perfectly all right. Nobody would know it. So they would come. I'm keeping no one on the side for multiple reasons, but I was once divorced. Therefore, that right away, that's anathema. Well, I know that. My podiatrist in New York City this past fall, here I am sitting in his chair. He's taking care of my feet. And he said, he calls this lady by name, a very prominent lady. You'll all know her if I told you, so I won't tell you. But she's very prominent. She's read your books. This is what the podiatrist is saying to him. She's read your books and she's trying to convert me. I'm a Jew. She's trying to convert me to her way of thinking, which happens to be without any offense because it's a marvelous concept and nice positive way of thinking, which is Christian Science. Well, she's a Christian Scientist and she's trying to convert me, the Jew, to Christian Science. I said to her, well, I'm a Jew. My father was an Orthodox Jewish butcher and we were raised in a strictly kosher home. Though I don't maintain a strict kosher home, I still consider myself a Jew, but I do go to a man who is a friend of mine and his name is Neville. When he comes to town, he happens to be in town at the moment. So I'm going to all of his lectures. Oh, she said, I've heard of that man. I've read his books. Well, the books are all right. I've read them. They're all right, but I wouldn't go near that place. Well, he said, well, why? She said, well, because the man is divorced. Not only divorced, but I also heard that he lived with a woman for years before he married the girl he's married to now. And so my friend Hal, not understanding the picture of life, he tried to justify my behavior. He said, well, can't you forgive him? God is merciful. If God can forgive, can't you try to be like God and forgive too? I said, Hal, why do you say that? Am I in need of her forgiveness? of all the things in the world. So she wouldn't come near my meetings because I was once married and someone told her I lived with a woman. Well, really, every husband lives with a woman. Neville is something else. Let me tell you something. Now let's pop in here into, because before we go into the silence, we want to address some comments. Hi, Angela. It seems like manifestation has made me less popular amongst men, even though I've been manifesting for people to love me. Why is that? Is it because I am on a higher level or a higher or lower frequency to them? Remember this morning we spoke about it, about beliefs and doubts. Sometimes we're not willing to admit to ourselves what it is. There's an underlying fear there of not being liked. And because it is something you believe, well, you have to see the evidence of it. That's the simple answer. But you go on and you say, I've been extremely successful when it comes to manifesting money, jobs, and opportunities. So it's confusing. Because you believe in that portion of things. You believe that money is no barrier. You see, money is inanimate. Jobs are inanimate. But when it comes to people and their feelings and how they feel about you, see, that is what gives us pause, makes us say, what if they don't, though? So you see, the what if they don't, though, that is the part running underneath. So it says, do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. Didn't I say that this morning? I'm sure I said that this morning in Morning Inspiration. It's not the spoon that bends. It is your mind. Also, some of my manifestations are taking so long. You see? That's okay. I highlighted things. This is why I highlight things. We'll go to that and we'll go over it, because when we go into the silence, you'll understand. Like some manifestations have taken a year or so, my car, which was so worth it. And you say, and all of my manifestations seem to manifest at the most random times with the weirdest bridge of incidents, and not during the time I really feel it even. It will always manifest when I've imagined and don't feel anything. Well, Christian, the underlying fear is what you believe to be true. You see, we want to call it doubt, but it isn't doubt. It is what you believe to be true. But what you believe to be true is contrary to what you want. You want to be accepted by people, but you believe they might not like me. You believe that. So this is where the conflict comes. So because, remember, Neville Goddard says, the thing that you believe, that thing that you feel in your body will always win. It doesn't matter what you may want. It doesn't matter what you rationally think you want. The thing that you feel is the one you will experience. Pluto, hello, dearest. He says, Jesus Christ is yet an example of being divine. Indeed. So let us go back now to the things we have highlighted, because brace yourself, because the answer is there for why your manifestation is taking so long. I have to go all the way back, but that's all right. I'll sum it up for you because I know what it says. It says you can use a single light to boil some water, and it'll take a long time, but the water will boil because it's only one little. You can use a candle. So imagine, if you will, in your mind's eye, a candle, and you've got a little pot over top of the candle. Now the water will heat up eventually, will it not? But if you put 7 or 9 candles, however many you want to put under there, more than one, if you put 9 candles under that little pot, the water will boil faster. So what does that mean? It means the intensity of your feeling. This thing that you know to be true, it's visceral when you say, oh, like for instance, the man who was cussing out Roosevelt in his mind. You see that intensity? Oh, he knew he disliked that man. He knew he hated him. You see that? That is what it means by intensity. So your intensity, your level of intensity of that inner conversation and how you light it, that is what will bring about the quicker manifestation for you. Yes? The whole vast world is responding to the activity taking place within us. Listen, let me tell you the part that stuck out to me the most tonight. He says, you have heard it said. He says, I'll tell it to you. If you look on anything lustfully, you have committed the act. Matthew 5, verse 28. For that very act of feeling was the act. Did you hear? The act of feeling was the act. So it makes no difference. So he says, in the very moment of contemplating a thing with pleasure, you are doing it. So begin to contemplate your wantedness, your acceptance in society with pleasure. He goes on to say, contemplated with pleasure. Oh, that is lusting. Listen to it. You contemplate it with pleasure. You are lusting. You see, because we have such a negative connotation of lusting, but tonight, taste it a little bit differently. Contemplating with pleasure. What is it that you want? Contemplate it with pleasure. Right? He says, it hasn't a thing to do with your outer behavior or your activities. It has everything to do with what you are doing on the inside. And all depends on where you are on that level. Because there's no difference between divine imagining and human imagining, save the degree of intensity. 1 candle or 9. You go on to say, I've been believing in what ifs. Yes, but why haven't my imagining sessions overridden the doubts? I'm not laughing at you. I giggle because the answer is in here too, where we highlighted, right? Why is it not overriding the doubts? We'll take it from this part. He tells you we are in a political season, right? Oh my God, I'm not voting for Kamala. I don't know nothing about her. Oh, I'm not voting for Trump. All right. Whoa. Before something. So the doubt, you're trying to override the doubt. So where is your attention, Christian? If you are trying to override doubt, where is your attention? Let me ask you that question again. This question is for everybody now, including myself. Don't think that it's not for me. If you are trying to override doubt, where is your attention? Your attention would have to be on the doubt. So tonight, in order to set ourselves free, how about we get a little lustful? You are going to contemplate your desire with pleasure. Oh, yes, indeed. You don't have time to be thinking about doubts. If you are anti-doubt, what did he say? Though, if you are against, it just gets bigger. So before your pleasure. Does this make sense? Before your pleasure. Be about your pleasure then. And I'm going to read what he said because this is what we're going to use There's one more thing. Remember the man whose mother and brother would always call him and complain about, oh my God, my body hurts so much. Life sucks. 10 years. Well, his mother said 15, but he said 10. I guess he blocked out the other 5. And they used to write him and just, oh my God, right? And complain and bitch and moon. So he went to one, he would send them books, metaphysical books, but they would always throw them away. They didn't read them. So one time he went to Neville's lectures. He went to a few of them, not very many, because he was new there. But Neville said, go to the end. Remember where he says to develop a short scene? This is important now, because we're going to be doing it. The short scene. What was his short scene? His short scene, because his mother and brother always wrote him with letters, pen to paper, not email. So they wrote him with letters. And I guess he was a visual sort. So he saw his brother's handwriting. And he saw one thing. Oh my God, I've never felt better. That's what he saw. And that's what he heard, because that's what he wanted to hear. So he developed a short scene. Oh my God, I've never felt better. And he read it in the letter. And he was holding the letter in his hand. So the very act of holding that letter and feeling that letter in his mind's eye, right? Because remember what Neville says, experience in imagination what you would experience in reality. You notice he said, let it be natural. Let it take on the tones of reality. Well, here's how you do that. He always got written letters. That was natural for him to open up a letter and read it. It was natural for him. So he got the letter from his brother. He opened it and he read it. Oh my God, I've never felt so good. Or whatever I just said. I've never felt better. So naturally, that's what he would have done. Now, you and I are going into the silence. What is it that you want? What would you naturally do if it were true? What would you naturally do? Would you do a little dance? Get down tonight. What would you do? Would you dance? Would you do the running man? I don't know your personality, but you know it. So what would you do? So begin to see it, feel it, and sense it in your mind's eye. And notice how he said, make it short and sweet. It's always the best, isn't it? I'm finding it. Oh, yeah. Are you mad at me? I'm sorry, sugar buns. It's okay. It's okay. I'm right here. Let's read it, okay? Can we do that? All right. He says, so you sit quietly. Close your eyes, just, to keep your attention. And then construct a simple, the simpler the better, the simplest little scene, which implies the fulfillment of your dream. The holding of a piece of paper in your hand, a certain character. Well, that's what you want. Let it read what you want it to say. You want to shake a friend's hand, if that will be natural, then do that. You want to see the ring on a finger of some friend who is anxious to be happily married in the world, well, then see that. All you do it naturally and simply as you do it naturally at. Give it tones of reality, sensory vividness, and then open your eyes. And when you open your eyes, then you hold God trustworthy. Let us go into the silence for 5 minutes. And that concludes our 5 minutes of being in the silence. I trust tonight that you found this lecture very helpful. I know it was a long one, but I trust that you found it helpful. Whew, because it moved me. It sure did. So now your girl's got to be lustful about her. Contemplate your what? Dream with pleasure. That's what it means. Yes. And once you've done it, it is the feeling of the act that tells you you've done it. Anyway, I trust that you found it helpful. You know, Twitter is for the replay gang. YouTube and Facebook, I see you all. Who's here? Christian was here. Pluto was here. A.M. Amani, Stepping with Faith. Shea Butter. Wisdom Almighty was here as well. And who's here on Fanbase? KZ. Flo Smiles. Moon, I see you. That Deal, and Miss Fawn. Thank you all for being here on this glorious, glorious evening. It was a brilliant lecture. Now I gotta go put these dumplings in the soup. And then I'll see you in the morning. 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll kick it together. Oh, we'll kick it together. Oh, Christian, anytime. Anytime. Feel free to slide into my DMs with any questions, or as Neville says, any of your success stories. But of course, yes? All right. Countdown initiated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A little bit, and I wish you good night. Rest well.
Good night, little bit. Good night, everyone.
Night, Miss Fawn. Twitter is closed. I'm just freeing up hands.